Today on Angler West TV, we're fishing for cold water winter bass with professional bass angler Russ Meyer, who will show us how to find shallow fish with a spinnerbait. If you pay attention to this, you will be a better fisherman.
Pretty decent fish there.
And then Santa Claus will show us how he fishes Shasta Lake in the winter with jigs, as Santa gets on a good bite and hooks up with some of those elusive Shasta Lake smallmouth bass.
Ho, ho, ho.
I'm Justin Wolf, and this is Angler West Television. It's a cold winter morning on Shasta Lake about 2 days after a rainstorm, so Russ Meyer will start off looking for spotted bass that have moved up shallow to feed in the incoming water.
It looks like there's a bunch of bait right in here in the entrance of this cut. And what we're doing is just tracking the bait to see if it's back toward the running water or out toward the secondary points. So I'm just idling up in the middle and see what it looks like for food. And if there's a lot of it back in the back, then I'm going to start throwing spinner baits right up near the current and along the little ledges close to the run of water. If I don't get anything there, then I'll pull back until I find that bait that's near the point area someplace. What we're doing now, we're just working our way back here, and usually I like to go straight to the back when I've identified where the fish are at, but since we're just starting, I'm starting on like the secondary point coming into the back, which means just the first point coming out of the running water. So I'm going to start there and hit a couple of key bluffs and work my way right back to the actual current coming in. And little pockets like this are key when it's really storming, but it's 2 days after right now. So we're going to hit a couple to see if there's still a few fish in there. If not, we'll hit the main vein of the current coming in, throwing spinnerbaits. There should be some fish because there's quite a bit of shad out in the entrance of this little bay right here. There's one. Yeah, he's cold and he's skinny, but the point is he's up here right near this run of water, so there's a good chance we're going to have a good day and get a couple of nice fish on spinnerbaits. You just got to work these spinnerbaits really slow. The water temperature is only 47, 48. Now, when they get right up in the current, you don't necessarily have to work it slow because they're there to feed. So they're pretty quick when it comes to that. They just don't have a lot of energy. But if you're back away from the run of water, run that bait very slow, just turning the bottom. I'm using 3/4 ounce spinnerbaits. One thing nice about in the cold weather fishing is when you get weather like this, it's the next day or 2 days after the storm, or even during the storm on a warm rain. Lately we've been having a lot of snow, but now the snow level was much higher, so the water temperature coming into the lake is a couple of degrees warmer than the actual water temperature in the lake. So that's one reason why they're drawn right up into that run of water. It's warmer, the food chain's in there, and they're there to eat and warm up. It's so shallow up there that this 3/4 ounce is slamming the bottom a little bit too hard up there. And I want to stay just above the rocks, ticking them occasionally, but not beating them up. So I'm going to switch over to a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait that's real light and fluffy, and it'll just barely tick the top of those rocks in there. There's one. I picked up a real light spinnerbait and threw it right up in the fast current in the whitewater, and it was about 1.5 feet of water, and he hit it. This is one of these new spinner baits. These are great baits. This one particular one's very light, so it works particularly well up in that really shallow white water. You don't have to worry about bumping the bottom too hard on it. Right up there, just below that riffle there, the white water, the water's only about this deep. And I can actually see my spinnerbait, the blades and the skirt, running right along there and seeing that fish hit it. So it can't be but 18 inches deep at the most. Well, what we're going to do now is just start running a few of these little creek channels coming in, mostly because when it's really cold like this, even the air temperature and water temperature, you know, if you can get a couple of fish out of each cut, that's actually pretty good. If you can cover 10 or 15 cuts in a day, you know, you're going to have a pretty big day. And the odds are, if you catch fish up in that current, they're generally going to be some bigger fish. Although, during the actual storm, when it's raining really hard, that's your best chance of catching the really big fish. But each day that it progresses away from the storm into a high pressure situation, the bigger fish tend to leave and the smaller fish will stay or move in because of that warmer water. So if you're really looking for big fish, you got to concentrate during the storm, during the uncomfortable time. But if you're just looking for a day of fun fishing and nice weather, try to hit it 1 or 2 days after the storm. So what we're trying to do right here is cover as many of these little cuts as we can. And now that I've caught them in the very back, I won't even fish further out. I'll just key in strictly in the very back of the cuts and hit as many as we can. And then if we're not getting quite the results we're hoping, then we'll probably switch and go maybe up into the Pit River away from these snow-covered banks where the water might be even warmer yet. And we'll try that as the day progresses. We moved up the Sac to the next cove, and I noticed the water temperature didn't warm up as much as it did further down in the Sac. So my instinct is that we just got to stay away from that snow melt as much as possible and try to pick up a degree or two. So I was going to go up the Pit, but in the McCloud there's some off-colored water, and there's a bunch of creeks coming in there that are away from the snow-capped mountains. So I think we can get back to that 48-degree water and a little more off-colored water and do a little better in there.
Some anglers might think that during winter, the bass in Shasta Lake can only be found deep and they're not inclined to feed. But Russ Meyer knows differently.
Steelhead fishing or not, but this water is like the perfect color for steelhead and bass. So when you get the heavy rains in the beginning of the winter, that water is so full of silt that it's like choking the bass. So it's good in some cases, but most of the time, latter part of the winter, most of that's rinsed out, and it's just nice, clear, aqua green color, you know, and the fish just seem like they breathe better in that, and they get right up in that run of water and eat. And that's this color water right here. Well, they're trying to get bigger, but he's still a couple of pounds or close, 1 3/4 pounds. What we're doing right here is there's just enough current. It's kind of like drifting for steelhead, and there's a deep ledge right over there, and I'm just rolling this spinnerbait right down off that ledge. Using the right selection of spinnerbait rods is pretty critical too when you're out there fishing. And for instance, this right here is a Powell spinnerbait rod. It's a 6.5 to 7 foot. Either one of those will work, whatever you're comfortable with. This one is a 7, but it's a lightweight rod. Throwing this 3/8 ounce spinnerbait, but this particular spinnerbait is really fluffy, and it actually feels more like a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait. So all the more reason why you want to switch to a lighter rod, throw in a real shallow spinnerbait. My other spinnerbait rod that I like to throw in the winter time, and by the way, that light one is for throwing right up in a really shallow, fast moving water. That light spinnerbait works really good. But as you get off into 8 feet or so or deeper, 8 to 20, then you want to switch over to a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait. And the 3/4 ounce spinnerbait I can throw on a lot heavier line, so I actually go to 15 to 17 pound line, and I'll just slow roll it. I'll throw it up there in about 5 6 feet of water and really crank it slow until I'm banging the rocks pretty good, and I'll try and stay in contact with that bottom all the way out to 20 feet deep in that, right in that gut where the run of water is. And a lot of those fish will be laying there, usually be a couple of boulders, and boom, it'll drop 10 12 feet. And right where that drop off is where these fish are laying. So I like a stiff spinnerbait rod. This is actually a 7.5 foot cranking rod, but I use it for spinnerbaits. Mostly it's a lot like a pitching stick or a light flipping stick. Because down there in 10, 12 feet of water, when you're banging those rocks, you want to go so slow, but when those fish hit it, you want to drill them real hard, just as if you're flipping, and this rod is ideal for that. So I just slow rolling it right down along that ledge right there. Just, it's like they pulled off out of the run of water and they were laying on a little deeper cut right here. Still not the size we're looking for, you know, but it again, it kind of goes back to it's been sunny now for 2 days or a day and a half or so it's a little tougher to get the better fish.
Up next, there's more from Shasta Lake with Russ Meyer, but first, let's have a look at his trophy room that catalogs decades of successful bass fishing.
This right here is our guest house at my wife's and I property here in Redding. And this is pretty much where a lot of my friends come up and stay and hang out for the tournaments, and we, you know, get our tackle ready in here, and the friends stay in the guest room, and we keep our boats all out here in the garage and the carport, so we have plenty of light. But mostly inside this guest house, I have the trophies I've won over the years for the past 20 years or so. And I try to keep them in here, not so much just so I can reflect on, you know, how good I did. It's mostly I can remember, it helps me remember pretty much what I did on every tournament in this wall here, this like 1 through 4th place. I don't really hang anything less than that because I don't remember what I did on a less, you know, place than that. But the top places, you know, if I'm fishing a Shasta tournament in February, I can go look on my wall and find out all the tournaments in February I did good and kind of reflect back on them and think, oh yeah, I was throwing jigs on that or topwater on that and what arm and so forth. And so it really helps me remember and jog my memory. So besides that, it's the fishing house, and it kind of makes it look a little more fishy in here. You know, and what's funny, out of all the trophies I have in here, some of them are, you know, are more favorites than others, and it isn't always just because of a win, but you know, for example, I have a Redman tournament that I got 2nd place in, Big Fish, and my wife and kids and all of us went to Disneyland in Florida on that. They sent us there, you know, free of charge. So that was one big one, and also the Bassmaster. I won the Bassmasters in 2005 and 2nd in Bassmasters on Shasta in 2004. So those were probably 2 of my biggest accomplishments, and I really kind of cherish those. So I tend to put those up front above everything. But mostly it's a combination of, you know, individual little tournaments that mean a lot, and it's hard to pinpoint those. But the Bassmasters are probably my favorite ones. These are the Bassmaster tournaments that I've had. I haven't fished that many that haven't been out here that long, but when they did come out here, you know, I had some pretty significant ones. But there's some older ones clear back in the mid-90s, late 90s that I fished in the Delta and Powell and so forth. But again, here's the one that I really love the most. But that's sort of the biggest accomplishment of mine. I mean, I have some other stuff that I really love. I got Angler of the Year several times, and but again, anytime you can finish first place on a major event, whether it's FLW, Bassmasters, or any of those.
Welcome back to Shasta Lake. I'm Justin Wolf. Shasta Lake has smallmouth and largemouth bass and even some red-eye bass, but it's the Kentucky spotted bass that has really adapted the best to Shasta's ecosystem. It's wintertime, and Russ Meyer has a shallow water spinnerbait pattern working that's based on targeting feeder streams.
He's not that big, but he's decent. A little bit better. There's a little contour to the bank right here, and it swings out, and I've been watching the meter, and wherever you can find those little drop-offs where the current's hitting it, pushing right up and kind of causing a bit of an eddy right there. That's where these fish tend to be laying right here. So that's the 2nd cut in a row they've been doing that. But and this fish is a fairly mature fish. He's starting to get a little black on the belly, and he's up there feeding. Another one. That's a great spot to hook them right there. They're pretty tough to lose when you get them there. And again, we're back to the spinnerbait, this real light 3/8 ounce, because we're getting up into this shallow little bit of current right here. Just bouncing it right along the bottom in about 2 to 3 feet of water. You could get away with throwing a Bass Tricks or some other shad looking crankbaits or rip baits and probably do the same thing, but the spinnerbait is so much more slow retrieve on it. You can just really bump and grind the bottom, or using a crankbait or something, it's a little more challenging to do that, or a rip bait. They're designed to be a little twitching faster, trying to get a reaction bite, where I'm just trying to get a slow feed bite with the spinnerbait. The water temperature is only 48 degrees, so whatever you throw, it needs to be fairly slow. Right now, even though it's real shallow, I'm using the heavier bait just so I can get up ahead of that clear water and drag it into the dirty water, where it's a little tougher to do that with a light spinnerbait. So even though it's shallow, I'm just cranking it a little faster and using a heavier one. Oh, there's a pretty decent fish there. There's a nice fish. Yeah, this gray on the belly right here, that's just showing a big fish. So as soon as they start getting that, they're usually about 2.5 to 3 pounds and up. But they sure seem to be liking this spinnerbait. It's chartreuse and shallow running bait, and they're liking it. It's a good looking bait. We'll let this guy go for another day here. Yeah, that's the whole key to this is you just got to cover a lot of cuts. We hit several of them that had no bites, no fish in it, and you can't get discouraged. You just got to keep rolling from one cut to the next, and every once in a while you hit, every 2 or 3 of them pockets that'll have a bunch of fish in there eating. And this one right here, there's got a lot of fish in here. Yeah, even though right now it's a little late in the day and a little too high a sun and the water's really clear in there, but don't be afraid to get right up in there where that riffle's at, under like early morning conditions, or if it's dirty water, because a lot of these big fish will be laying right there in that white water behind a big boulder.
Hey, we're the Bongos Girls, and you're watching Angler West Television.
Today, I'm with Chris Kringle, otherwise known as Santa Claus, as he enjoys his yearly Christmas Day fishing excursion on Shasta Lake. After a hard night of delivering presents, Chris enjoys the beautiful winter days and excellent winter bass fishing on Shasta. That's a swing and a miss for Santa.
Ho, ho!
You might think Chris has an advantage due to his magical powers, but in fact, the bass are not impressed with magic dust or flying reindeer, but they sure do fall for a 3/4 ounce football head jig tipped with a twin-tailed grub. Chris always marinates his entire bag of baits in sand. Chris is one of the best bass fishermen I've ever known, and I'm sure he could do well on the tournament circuit as a bass pro. Who knows? Maybe he cuts his hair and beard short and dyes it dark in the off-season, and he's fishing right alongside the rest of us.
Ho, ho, ho!
Chris decided to make a move farther inside a creek channel to try to find some bigger fish. time of year, cuts with small feeder streams can sure be productive. That's a nice little Shasta Lake smallmouth. And that looks like a cross between a spotted bass and a smallmouth.
A little better smallmouth. Much better smallmouth. Ho, ho, ho.
Hey, thanks for watching today's episode of Angler West TV. You know, it's only with the sponsor support that the show is made possible, so please thank them when you can. Now get out there and do some great fishing.